Hello, I'm Miss Carla. This is Charlie. Oh, if you haven't been watching my daily read alouds, then this may be the first time you saw me with my new haircut. What do you think? It's very different, right? I used electric clippers to buzz the sides and the back, and then I used some hair cutting scissors to trim the top. It's kind of difficult because, it's hard to cut your own hair, which is why I decided to do the clippers on the sides. I kind of like it. It's interesting. It feels nice. It'll be really nice as it gets warmer. It'll feel cooler. Oh, Charlie, why are you putting your butt in the camera? Anywho, today we are going to read this book, one of my favorite picture books to read aloud, The Wolves in the Walls. It's written by Neil Gaiman and illustrated by Dave McKean. You might know the author Neil Gaiman because he's written a lot of books for kids, teenagers, adults. But the one that most kids know him for is Coraline, which was turned into an animated movie several years ago. And it's kind of a spooky story. And this story is a little bit spooky, but it's more funny than it is spooky. And then we're going to do a craft afterwards, which is a little bit difficult, and you might need help from an adult. But I think it'll be a really fun activity to do together. So I'll show you how to do that after we read the story. Okay, Charlie, I'm gonna need you to scoot along there, friend. Go ahead. Okay, the wolves in the Charlie. The wolves in the walls. Let's see, maybe I need to move this camera back up. The illustrations are really cool in this book. They're very interesting. They look mostly like they have pictures of realistic things, real things that have been compiled together, but then there's some drawings on top of that. It's all very interesting. See, it looks like pictures sort of cut out and pasted together like a collage. Collages are really fun to make. Maybe we'll do a collage next week. Ooh, that'd be fun. Lucy walked around the house. Inside the house, everything was quiet. Her mother was putting homemade jam into pots. Her father was out at his job playing the tuba. Her brother was in the living room playing video games. Lucy heard noises. The noises were coming from inside the walls. They were hustling noises and bustling noises. They were crinkling noises and crackling noises. They were sneaking, creeping, crumpling noises. Lucy knew what kinds of things made noises like that in the walls of big old houses, and she went and told her mother. "There are wolves in the walls," Lucy said to her mother. "I can hear them." "No," said her mother, "there are no wolves in the walls. You must be hearing mice, I suppose." "Wolves," said Lucy. "I'm sure it's not wolves," said her mother, "for you know what they say. If the wolves come out of the walls, then it's all over." "What's all over?" asked Lucy. "It," said her mother. "Everybody knows that." See all the jars of jam? Lucy picked up her pig puppet doll, which she'd had since she was a little baby. "I don't think it sounds like mice," she said to her pig puppet. In the middle of the night, when everything was still, she heard clawing and gnawing, nibbling and squabbling. She could hear the wolves in the walls plotting their wolfish plots, hatching their wolfish schemes. In the day, Lucy felt eyes upon her, watching her from the cracks and from the holes in the walls. They peeped through the eyes in paintings. She went to talk to her father. "There are wolves in the walls," she told him. "I don't think there are, Poppet," he told her. "You have an overactive imagination. Perhaps the noises you heard come from rats. Sometimes you get rats in big old houses like this." "It's wolves," said Lucy. "I can feel them in my tummy. And Pig Puppet thinks it's wolves as well." "Well, you can tell your puppet," began her father, and then he said, "Why am I asking you to tell her anything? She's just a puppet." Lucy patted her pig puppet's head so she wouldn't be offended. "Anyway, you know what they say about wolves," said her father. "If the wolves come out of the walls, it's all over." "Who says that?" asked Lucy. "People. Everybody. You know," said her father, and he went back to practicing his tuba. She was drawing a picture when she heard the noises again. A scrambling, rambling, rustling in the walls. "There are wolves in the walls," she told her brother. "Bats," he said. "You think it's a bats?" she asked. "No," he said. "I think you are." And he laughed for a long time at his own joke, even though it had not been a particularly good one. "I am not bats," said Lucy. "I am telling you there are wolves in the walls." "Firstly, there are no wolves in this part of the world," he told her. "Secondly, wolves don't live in walls, only mice and rats and bats and things. Thirdly, if the wolves come out of the walls, it's all over." "Who says?" asked Lucy. "Mr. Wilson at my school," said her brother. "He teaches us about wolves and things." "And how does he know?" asked Lucy. "Everybody knows," said her brother, and he went back to doing his homework. Look at that spooky eye in the hole in the wall. The next day, the noises were louder. "We have to do something about those mice," said her mother. "Pesky rats," said her father. "I'll call someone up about them in the morning." "It's bats, I know it is," said her brother happily. "I shall ensure that I sleep with my neck exposed tonight, in case one of them is a vampire bat. Then, if it bites me, I shall be able to fly and sleep in a coffin and never have to go to school in the daytime again." But Lucy did not think it was mice, or rats, or bats. She shook her head at this sad display of ignorance. Then she cleaned her teeth, and she kissed her mother and father, and she took herself off to bed. The old house made no noises that night. "I don't like it," Lucy told her pig puppet. "It's too quiet." But soon enough she closed her eyes, and she was fast asleep. In the middle of the night, there was a howling and a yowling and a bumping and a thumping, and the wolves came out of the walls. "Oh no!" shouted Lucy's mother. "The wolves are coming out of the walls!" shouted Lucy's father, picking her up and running down the stairs with her and his best tuba in his arms. "It's all over!" shouted her brother as he fled down the stairs beside them. The family went out the back door and into the garden. They huddled at the bottom of the garden that night. The lights were on in every room in their house. Back in the house, they knew the wolves were watching their television and eating the food from the family's pantry and dancing wolfish dances up the stairs and down again. I like how bright and yellow this page is and how dark and blue and gray this page is, because you can see the silhouette of the wolf here and the family down here. We should go and live in the Arctic Circle, said Lucy's father, where the houses are made with walls of ice and snow, and there's nothing but polar bears, and seals for hundreds of miles. When the wolves come out of the walls, there's nothing else you can do. Said Lucy. We must go and live in the Sahara Desert, said her mother, where the walls are colored tense silks that flap in the hot wind, and there's nothing but camels and desert foxes for thousands of miles. Bleh, said Lucy. I think we should go and live in outer space, said her brother. We could live in an orbiting space station with metal walls with lights on them that blink and flash, and nothing but foozles and squassics for billions of miles. What are foozles and squassics? Asked Lucy. Outer space things, he told her. They have lots of legs, except for the squassics, who don't have any legs at all, but they are friendly enough. I don't want to live anywhere that isn't my house, said Lucy, and I've left my pig puppet behind. We can get you a new one wherever we're going, said her mother. Now let's go to sleep. It was chilly at the bottom of the garden, and Lucy missed her pig puppet. She'll be all alone in that house with the wolves, she thought. They could do dreadful things to her. Look at how the trees are showing Lucy's imagination about what the wolves are doing to the pig puppet. So Lucy crept back up the garden, quieter than any mouse, and she slipped up the back steps and through the back door and into the house. Lucy was standing there in the little hall at the back of the house when she heard some wolves coming down the stairs. They had been eating jam and toast in front of the television and were coming back for more. Where could she go? What could she do? Quick as the flick of the wing of a bat, Lucy slipped into the wall. She crept through the house on the inside, through the downstairs, up the middle, and into the wall of her bedroom. Let me make sure I didn't skip a page. Nope. There was a huge wolf, fat as anything, asleep on her bed. He was wearing her socks, 2 on his back paws, 1 on his ear, and 1 on the tip of his tail. He was snoring very loudly. Lucy pushed open the picture that hung over her bed, and she climbed down carefully, quietly, and she picked up her pig puppet from the floor and gave her a hug. Snorgle snurk, snored the wolf, fast asleep. Quiet as a shadow, Lucy climbed up to the top of her old doll's house, and from there to the top of a chest of drawers, and from there to the mantelpiece, and behind the picture, and back into the walls. It's kind of nice in the walls, she thought. I was worried sick about you, she told her pig puppet, and she squeezed her very tight. Through the walls crept Lucy and back into the garden. Where have you been? They asked her. I had to go and get my pig puppet, she told them. I told you I would have bought you a new one, said her mother, one that was pink and new and not going gray. That was why I wanted my pig puppet, said Lucy, and she went back to sleep, cuddling her pig. The next morning, Lucy's mother went to work, and Lucy's brother went to school, and Lucy and her father sat down at the bottom of the garden. He practiced his tuba and read travel brochures. We could go and live on a desert island, her father told them all that evening, over a dinner of hamburgers and French fries and little apple pies with astonishingly hot middles, which Lucy's mother had brought for them when she got back from work. We could live in a grass hut with grass walls on an island in the middle of the sea with nothing but goats on the island and nothing but fishes in the sea. We could live in a hot air balloon, said her mother. We could live in a tree house at the top of a very tall tree, said her brother. Or We could go back and live in our house again, said Lucy. What? Said her father. What? Said her mother. What? Said her brother. What? Said the Queen of Melanesia, who had dropped by to help with the gardening. Well, said Lucy, there's a lot of space in the walls of the house, and at least it isn't cold there. What about the wolves? Asked her father. They are in the house, said Lucy, not the walls. Lucy's mother and father and brother grumbled and frowned. Still, none of them wanted to spend another night sleeping at the bottom of the garden. They tried sleeping in the shed, but it smelled too much of lawnmowers and of the fertilizer used for the rhubarb. So they crept up the back steps, through the back door, into the back hall, and into the walls. We must be very quiet, said Lucy. But the wolves were making such a noise that no one could have heard them anyway. The family crept through the walls of the house, peeking out through the eye holes of paintings and through the cracks of things. The wolves were watching television and eating popcorn. They had turned the television up as loud as it would go, and they had spilled popcorn all over the floor, where it stuck to the unfinished slices of toast and jam. There were wolves dashing up the stairs. There were wolves sliding down the banisters. Some of the wolves had put on the family's nicest clothes, and they had made big holes in the backs of them for their tails. The family went to sleep in the walls. In the middle of the night, something woke them up. The wolves were having a party. They were singing and dancing and telling jokes. One of the wolves was playing her brother's video game, and he was beating all the high scores. Two of the youngest of the pack of wolves had got into the pots of Lucy's mother's homemade jam and were eating it straight out of the pot and smearing it onto the walls. The biggest, fattest wolf of all was playing an old wolf melody on Lucy's father's second-best tuba. My jam! My walls! Said Lucy's mother. My video game high scores! Said Lucy's brother. My second-best tuba! Said Lucy's father. Right, I've had enough, said Lucy. There wasn't much in the space between the walls, just an old broken chair. Lucy picked up a chair leg. You know, I've had just about as much as I can take of those wolves too, said her father and her mother and her brother. Each of her family picked up a broken chair leg. Ready? Said her mother. Ready, said everybody else. And howled the wolves. The people have come out of the walls. And when the people come out of the walls, shouted the biggest, fattest wolf, flinging aside the tuba, it's all over! Round and round they ran, gathering up their most treasured possessions. Flee, flee, flee! For once the people come out of the walls, it's all over! Down the stairs went the wolves, scurrying and hurrying and tumbling over each other in their hurry to get out of the house and get away. Whose idea was this, anyway? Moaned one of the wolves. And the wolves ran, and they ran, and they ran, and they ran, and they didn't stop running until they got somewhere where there would never be any people in the walls who would come out in the middle of the night whooping and singing people songs and brandishing chair legs. And whether they went to the Arctic or the desert or outer space or somewhere else entirely, nobody knows. But from that day to this, those wolves have never again been seen. It took the family several days of cleaning up to make the house look anything like it did before the wolves came out of the walls. Remember the picture I pointed out earlier where it was bright and yellow on one side and dark and spooky on the other side? Now it's the reverse. Dark and spooky on the first side and bright and yellow on the second side. But eventually, everything was back the way it had been before, except for Lucy's father's second-best tuba, which had sustained severe jam damage. So Lucy's father sold his second-best tuba and bought a sousaphone instead, which he had always wanted. And everything went back to normal, until Lucy noticed something funny. She heard rustlings and scratchings and squeezings and creakings in the old house, and then one night she heard a noise that sounded exactly like an elephant trying not to sneeze. She went and got her pig puppet. "Do you think I should tell the rest of them," she said, "that we have elephants living in the walls of the house?" "I'm sure they'll find out soon enough," said the pig puppet to Lucy. And they did. Do you see what this is? What is that? A shadow of an elephant foot smushing onto that jam sandwich. The end. What did you think of that story? It's silly, right? It's a little spooky, but it's mostly silly. I wanted to show you on the cover. See the two wolf eyes? Spooky. All right, so the craft that I want to show you today, I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm not going to do the whole thing on the video because it's something that takes a while, but I'm going to show you the steps to do it. First, I'll show you what we're making. This is an old book that nobody wanted anymore. And I was inspired by things hiding in other things, things sneaking around and not being where you would expect them to be. And I decided to make a secret cubby box out of an old book. So if you put it on your bookshelf, nobody will know you could hide your secret stuff in there. This book box was actually made by my sister, Dina, who is an art teacher in South Carolina. She's the same one who taught me how to do that cool drawing we did the first week. And something else I think I showed you too. Anyway, she's very artistic and crafty. And I looked up some instructions on how to go about making one like this. And this is what I came up with. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time to do this because, can you see how deep that is? It's about an inch deep. This one's actually a little bit deeper. So you have to actually glue the pages together, and then you have to actually cut through all those pages to cut the pages out and leave just the outside for the walls of the book. So it takes a little time. And the first step, of course, is to find a suitable book. That book that I just showed you was a very old book that nobody wanted. I think that she got it at a thrift store or something, and she thought it looked pretty cool and kind of old-timey, but nobody's going to sit and read that book. So this book I found on my shelf is actually in pretty good condition, and it's fairly new, but I got it very cheap on the internet, and I have another copy of this book. So I decided that I would use this one to make my box out of. Now, if you want to do this, don't use a library book. It has to be your own personal book, and it has to be a book that you have permission to cut up and glue together and make no longer readable. And I would suggest a book that either nobody in your house is going to want to read, that you just happen to have for some reason that nobody wants anymore, one you've already read, one you have another copy of, and it should be hardcover, like this, meaning it's not a floppy paperback, because this will make it sturdy and flat and it won't flop around. Okay? And it's also good for it to be a fairly thick book, a chapter book that's pretty thick. The thinner the book is, the smaller the little compartment inside will be. So it depends on what kind of thing you're hoping to store in your little secret cubby. So I went through the book first, and I decided where I wanted to start. And I decided to start with chapter 1 because I wanted to leave the table of contents so you can look at the table of contents. This is one of my favorite books, by the way, from when I was a kid. And to this day, Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. And so since I actually value the story, I wanted to leave the table of contents so people could see it, or so I can see it when I open it, or if I made this as a gift for somebody. So once you've decided which page you're going to start on, you're going to use a ruler and draw lines in the shape. I've already cut a few layers out so you can see. Here we go. You can see that I've already cut a few layers out, because the goal is to cut straight down through all the pages, not to the very bottom, but close, in as straight a line as you can so that it's one rectangular shape that's cut out of the pages. In order to help me with that, I used a ruler to draw my lines. Then I used this sturdy wooden ruler, and I laid it on the edge so that it doesn't stick, it doesn't overlap with where I'm cutting. It's a little bit outside of that. And then I took a C-clamp. If you don't have a C-clamp, some other kind of clamp or clip that will just help hold it in place is good. You might know that books, even a hardcover book with a sturdy spine, can kind of wobble a little bit, and the pages can sort of slip past each other. And we want these pages to stay as much in the same position as possible. I asked my dad's advice on what would be a good way to hold these pages in place, and he suggested the C-clamp and something flat to go along the top so that it's not just one clamp clipping into the, like pushing into the page. So here we go. So then we use a blade. Now, don't use a kitchen knife or something that's not meant for this kind of work, because I don't want you to slip and cut yourself. Get the help of an adult, or at least the supervision of an adult if you're old enough to use a cutting device. And don't make your blade stick out too far, because that makes it more dangerous. We want to be safe. And make sure you lock the blade in place if you have this kind. Some blades stay where they are and just have a cap, and you don't have to worry about sliding in and out. So then just follow the line that you drew with your pencil. And if it's a nice sharp blade, it will cut through several pages at once. And don't ever cut over your own leg or arm or someone else's. I have a sturdy board under here that I'm cutting on. See? And so with those few cuts I made just now, I can pull out, look, it cut through like 3 or 4 pages all at once. So you will keep doing that over and over. I'll do it one more time to show you right now. Maybe I'll finish this particular project this weekend, and next week I'll show you my finished result at our next story time. How does that sound? Another page out. Okay. Now that I'm doing this, I'm thinking, after you've cut through a few pages, you could take the clamp off. You can already see the indent I'm making. And you could peel back the pages that have already been cut. And then you can just continue to follow the cutting lines that you have on here. See, it's already gone through a bunch, so you might have to cut a couple times to get it to finish at the corners and everything. But just keep going and cut all that through. Then you're going to have, and then I would stop a few pages from the back, because I don't think you want to cut all the way through to the back cover. I think it'll just be a little sturdier if you don't. But glue the last few pages together. And then I'll just show you what we'll do on the top, because after you've got it all cut through, you're going to have to glue all the pages down. And you can do it one page at a time. You might want to experiment with what works best for you. I've got some Elmer's glue here and a little sponge brush, and I'm just going to put some of the glue If you have Mod Podge, have you heard of Mod Podge? If you have Mod Podge, that is a good material for this kind of a craft. It's a lot like Elmer's glue, but it's a little bit thinner. So I'm just putting some of that glue on my little sponge brush. And I'm going to take the top page. I'm going to lift the top page up. And I'm going to put glue on the next page. I'm going to go in kind of as far as I can into the spine. And it just has to be a very thin layer of glue because, as I'm sure you know, the Elmer's glue sticks very well to paper. It doesn't take much at all. I wonder if you could do this with a glue stick, like the kind that you twist up. I don't know how well that would work, but it would be worth a try. If you try it and it works, leave a comment to advise the rest of us. Okay? You put a little more glue down here. You could also probably mix the glue with water to make it a little bit thinner because, like I said, it's going to take so little that it doesn't probably even have to be solid. So I'm going all the way around. Oh, and you see it's a little bit difficult here because the page wants to wrinkle up on me. Of course, I'm also trying to do this while holding it in my hand. So use your other hand to press the page down. Then you should be able to fold the top page back and press it down from the inside out. So start at the spine and press away from the spine and along the outside edges and make it line up all the way to the outside. Now I'm going to lay this down so I can press it well. Now, remember, when you get to this part, you will have already cut all the way through, because what I'm in danger of doing right now is accidentally gluing these pages down to this middle part, which I don't want to do. It'd be harder to cut through that if there was glue all on it. But I just wanted to show you. So now I have 2 pages that are glued together, and then I would do that again. Now I have read that you can glue every few pages together and then run glue along the outside to help them all stick. Maybe put a couple thick layers of glue around the outside to keep it all together. It's up to you. I would encourage you to experiment with different strategies and techniques and see what works the best. You'll also notice that the paper gets kind of wrinkly when you put the glue on it. This paper, when it gets wet, gets a little wrinkly. So we're going to probably have to put some kind of weight down on that to help it stay flat when it dries. Now, my first thought is just to close the book, right? And maybe put something on heavy on top to hold it all flat. We don't want to accidentally glue the book closed. So maybe put a piece of wax paper down before you close it so that if anything, the wax paper might get a little stuck, but we should be able to peel that off. So if you do that all the way through, you'll have a cool box with a hidden compartment inside that just looks like a book. Even if you do glue all of the pages down individually, I would still probably put some glue along the outside just to keep it all, hold it all firmly together on the very edges. But anyway, like I said, this is a difficult project and it will take quite a while to complete it. But I thought it might be something fun for families to do together. And it's a good way to reuse old books that you're not reading anymore and don't have a better way to get rid of. Okay? I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the story. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.